Hey guys, it's Ricer Boy, and today we're going to talk about the reasons why you should buy a Sentra Spec V. So currently right now, I'm filming inside of a 2002 Sentra Spec V, currently running straight pipe exhaust, intake, headers, full exhaust, just the good bolt-ons. I've owned this car for almost a year, so I've had some good experience with it, and I think I could speak for exactly how good these cars are as a whole. So the first reason why you should consider getting a Sentra Spec V is the price. These cars are cheap. Guess how much I got this one for? $2,200. Now this particular car is not perfect, it's actually quite far from it, but for the work that I've had to do with it, and for how much it's cost to get it to this state, I'm honestly impressed. It's hard to find cars out there that you can genuinely build on and get any performance gains out of for the sub 5K price category. And for the cars that you can tune, they're not as much fun as this one is. Another reason to consider these cars is the way that they look. If you actually think about it, the 02 to 03 model years of the Sentra Spec V is the closest USDM car you can get to the R34 Skyline GTR. Not in drivetrain, not in the engine, but in looks. Interesting enough, even if you check the Wikipedia article for this car, the aesthetics of this car were inspired by the R34 Skyline GTR. The headlights have a smoke tint and a double ring to them. When it comes to the Spec V name designation, that was actually inspired by the V-Spec designation for GTR models in Japan. There's a lot about this car that conveys Nissan's history and design language. In a way, this car is like a time capsule for early 2000s Nissan, and that's something that I can't object to myself. So another reason to consider this car has a 6-speed manual. That's right, a 2002 Nissan Sentra with a 6-speed manual. Who would have ever thought? Now this transmission is not perfect, there are definitely some faults with it, but having that extra gear means that on the highway this car is actually quite pleasant. Even with my exhaust, when I'm going at about, I think 70 miles per hour, the engine's at about 2,500 RPM. And that's not too bad, given that this engine can be quite refined and quiet depending on what mods you do. Now speaking of the drivetrain of this car also has another interesting feature. This car came standard with a Torsen helical limited slip differential. And while that may not seem like a big feature, what that means is that the power of the engine goes to the wheel with most traction. Because in standard front wheel drive cars with an open differential, all of the engine's power and torque goes to the wheel with the least amount of traction. And that doesn't make sense, especially for a car that you're going to modify and track. If you get this car, that's one less modification you have to do if you want optimal traction and trackability. In fact, some of the fastest front wheel drive cars in the world use helical limited slip differentials. Just look at the Honda Civic Type R, VW Club Sport GTI, the list goes on and on. But there are plenty of great front-wheel drive cars that utilize a system like that. So if you're done hearing about the drivetrain of this car, let's hear about some specs. This car makes torque. More torque than horsepower. 175 horsepower and 180 pound-feet of torque goes to the wheels, and my God, do you feel the torque. This car makes so much torque that even with the differential, it torque steers, and on the stock 215 tires on 17-inch rims, it fucking roasts them. Now compared to all the other front-wheel drive performance cars out there that happen to be made by Honda, the torque in this car is great. I don't even have to downshift sometimes if I want to accelerate. All of the actual go is right there, because you don't get go in power, you get go in torque, and just go is that gut feeling that you get in your stomach when it's sort of pushed back. That's why Tesla is able to create such quick cars. It's because of their utilization of the instantaneous torque of electric motors at 0 RPM. So remember kids, there's nothing bad about a little bit of torque. Now even though I'm currently stuck in some god-awful traffic, there's one great saving grace about this car when you could find the right road. And that's the handling. Even on stock suspension, the Spec V designation of the Sentra means an already upgraded suspension from the already upgraded SCR suspension. Now while this car doesn't have the best ride quality on stock shocks and springs, it does handle very well. It can get a little bit rolly at high G scenarios, but compared to a lot of other stock suspension setups, it's very rigid and it has very high limitations. Unlike a lot of other front-wheel drive cars, you won't be seeing much understeer over here. Now this part can be considered subjective, but I think it's true. And it's that the Sentra Spec V is a very unique tuner car. Now in the front-wheel drive tuning community, all you see is Honda this, Honda that, Acura Honda, RSX Civic. I'm done with it. Let's be honest, we need to look at other cars in that area because there are a lot of underdogs that don't get the respect that they deserve. And this car is definitely one of them. People do a lot of shit with these cars. They supercharge them and turbocharge them to 300, 400, and even 600 horsepower. There's definitely a lot of good stuff to work with here. Yet people just talk about Honda. But if you want to stand out and drive something unique, definitely get one of these cars, because people have always been asking me what this thing is. Now the last thing I want to cover today is something that I know will be highly valued by many people who are strapped for cash all the time, like me. And it's that this car has some pretty cheap parts. See, even though this is the most sporty version of the Sentra, it actually shares the same engine as the Altima, which is the famous QR25DE. And because it uses an Altima engine, parts are common, easy to find, and cheap. And there's nothing bad about that. Well guys, this was a fun video to make. Thanks for watching. I hope you figure out what car you're gonna buy. And peace out. Oh my god, someone next to me has their window down. They just looked at me. They thought I was like fucking gesturing at them or talking to them or something. That was really awkward. I gotta get out of here. Come on, traffic, let's go. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go.